The first question would be, what is your stance on euthanasia? How do you feel about it?
Um, well, it depends. If it's something like assisted suicide, then
Yeah,
I'm for it.
right,
If it's like deciding that all people over a certain age no longer are useful to society, so
right.
we should get rid of them, then I'm against that.
And that kind of like I had like 3 or 4 questions set up, and that kind of goes into my last question would be, well, where do you draw the line?
Yeah.
So is that kind of where you would draw the line? Is
Yeah, you know, these things are always difficult I think that, like, if the government were to try to regulate, I think that would be a really difficult thing to do. But it seems to me that as long as somebody has the will to live, then they should be given whatever is necessary for them to live to make that possible. But if they don't have the will to live, if they're sick of it, they're tired of being in pain or whatever, and they just want to go, then they should be assisted in doing that too.
So if you say that you're for it, under the right circumstances, if it was a child or even your child who was at the point where they were alive, because of medicine.
You mean like in a
If
coma
it was a
that
child,
they never get out of?
yeah, like that, or a child who was old enough to make that decision that, okay, well, I'm not going to get any better, and it was up to them, would it be okay, if it was a child or your child, would you still be okay with that? Or would that kind of make it tougher
Well, I
to be
think that
okay
would
with?
be tough, but I think that the will of the individual has to be,
It has to be up to them.
yeah, it has to be up to them. Where it gets really sticky is people who can't make that, people who are like in a vegetative state, in a deep coma, and they're not gonna come out. I've known people, when I was in grad school, one of the students in my department, had a massive aneurysm. And they said that she was brain dead before she hit the ground, and her parents had to pull the plug on her, and that was really difficult.
Yeah.
Again, it seems to me that it has to be if the individual shows signs, but again, if they're in so deep of a coma, you've heard these stories about people who are in coma for 20, 30 years and then they wake up, so if there's like some kind of government policy, then that would be really hard.
And that's kind of all the questions I had, but I guess I'll ask one more. I wasn't aware that there was already 2 states, I think it's Oregon and Washington, that it's actually legal in the U.S. as long as it's done by a medical professional.
Yeah.
Were you aware of that? Or
I did know that, yes. Yes, you're probably too young to remember Dr. Kevorkian and all that.
I've done a little research, but I don't remember.
Yeah, but, if you're gonna, have a horrible, painful disease and want to commit suicide, that's the place to go.
Well, that's all I have. Those are my
Okay.
questions.
Okay. My name is Dr. Sarah Wine, and I am a full-time lecturer in the Department of Humanities and Philosophy. And I am here to speak today about the issue of euthanasia.
Okay. What is your personal stance on human euthanization?
My personal view is that euthanasia is morally permissible under certain circumstances. I believe that that it is inhumane to force a person to suffer and go through certain indignities at the end of their life unnecessarily, and that people are also capable of fully consenting to ending their own lives, or to having their lives ended through some kind of assistance in such circumstances. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, human euthanization is already legal in Belgium, and they are now considering legalizing euthanasia for children under the age of 18 with consent from their parents. How do you feel about this law?
I do think that that euthanasia of children under the age of 18 should be legal, but I think that such situations or such cases need to be considered very carefully, and looked into very, very thoroughly by probably by panels of ethicists, in conjunction with the help of medical personnel. And these things need to be taken on a case-by-case basis. But I do believe that that there are cases where it would be not only morally justifiable, but maybe even best for that kind of end of life care. So.
If human euthanization were legal in America, do you think this decision should lie solely in the patient's hands or their physicians? If not them, whose hands should this decision lie in?
I believe that that it is a decision, again, that should always be made on in a case-by-case sort of way, with the help not only of the patient but also their doctors and also their families, especially in the case of minors. I don't think that it should be left entirely to the patient, because some patients would opt for such measures when they aren't probably necessary, or when they were in such a state of mind that they couldn't really give full consent to having their lives ended. So, for example, a person could be, suffering from clinical depression, and therefore not be in a good position to make this decision for themselves. But again, I really believe that this has to be decided on a case-by-case basis.
And philosophically speaking, would you say we have the right to die?
Yes, I definitely believe that. I don't. I believe that people have the moral right to commit suicide if they choose to. I believe that, especially in the case of consenting adults, we have the right to do with ourselves and our bodies what we wish, as long as it doesn't bring harm to others. And so yes, I do believe that.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, Father Tim, do you know what euthanasia is?
Well, the way I understand euthanasia is the direct taking of someone's life through some kind of means that are not normal or natural.
Okay. And what's your stance on that? Do you think it's ethical, or?
I don't think. I think first of all, it's a complicated question, but as a person of faith and as a Christian, my understanding is that nobody should actively take the life of another person, and no one has the right to take the life of another person. Now that doesn't mean that in defense of innocent life that we can't defend other people's lives, but that we should not actively take the lives of other people.
Okay, and where would you draw off the cutoff line? Like, for example, if a baby was born with an incurable disease and he was just suffering through it, do you think it's ethical to have the right to end the baby's life in order to help him from suffering?
Well, it's a difficult question, and nobody wants to see anybody, and especially a child, suffer. I think that it becomes more complicated for us because we understand that all life is sacred, and that's my understanding, and I think that's the understanding of people of my faith, that all life is suffering. All life is sacred, and so that none of us have the right to end a life or decide when a life is useful or worthy to be allowed to live. And so that even people who are sick or suffer from some kind of disease does not give us the opportunity or the chance to judge whether their life is valuable for us or not. We talk about those kind of things when we talk about the slippery slope, because once someone starts trying to decide who's worth living, as a child that's born that is mentally challenged and not able to hold down a job, does that mean that they're not valuable in the world? Or if someone is only born with one arm or one leg, does that mean that somehow they're not valuable as a human being, and so they don't really have the right to live? Who decides those things? I think it's for that reason we understand that all life is sacred, and no matter what the person's condition or not, you can't judge a person on what they whether they're complete physically, or if they have a disease, or if they've committed any serious crime. That's not something that we can judge ourselves.
Okay. Do you think you personally would be able to make that decision if somebody was being a burden on your family and basically was bringing them down with them, like there was no way of curing them, and if he felt like he was a burden, do you think, and they gave you the right, could you be able to do it? Would you be able to make that decision?
Well, I think first of all, it's our understanding that when I say our understanding, it's understanding of people in my faith that an individual should have the decision on whether they want to have extraordinary means used to prolong their life if they're dying. And there's some things that are basic, and there's some things that are extraordinary. And so for us, basic things would be things like hydration, that a person needs to be continued to receive hydration through an IV or some other source, and also basic nutrition. But before even that, the main thing is that a person is supposed to be kept comfortable and as free of pain as possible. Now, if that person who is suffering themselves would choose not to do anything extraordinary to maintain their lives, if there's no hope, medical hope to bring them a cure, they could choose not to do anything extraordinary beyond basic hydration and nutrition. But that others around me, or looking and making the decision for another person, would not ever be able to, and I would never be able to make the decision to end someone's life.
Okay, so if somebody chose you to do that, you don't think you would be able to?
No, and I think that's a difficult thing. No one wants to see someone suffer, but I don't think that I have the right to end anyone's life. Now, at the same time, I think that if a person had voiced to me that they didn't want to do anything extraordinary to maintain their life if there's no hope, I hope I would feel comfortable following their wishes and not doing any extraordinary things like putting in an airway or things like that perhaps would only prolong someone's life but would not afford them a chance to recover.
Okay.